1994 was quite the heated year in the world of gaming. The 16-bit console wars were still full on raging, ready to ramp things up even further with the upcoming 32-bit generation, and Nintendo, in their era of commissioning British developers to create games to appeal to a more Western market, releases a bizarre, yet incredibly fast platform racing game about sentient unicycles. Yeah. While all this was going ahead, on the other side of the pond was Pixar. In 1994, they were yet to change the future of animation with Toy Story, but they had already established themselves as innovators of computer-generated shorts. However, despite being on polar ends of the entertainment medium, these two worlds were about to collide in one of the strangest legal disputes in entertainment history. All because of a single red CG unicycle. This video is sponsored by Astro Arena. With 13 different heroes to choose from, each with their own abilities, every Astro Arena match plays differently thanks to its roguelite upgrade system. So even if you stick with your favourite hero, you'll be discovering new builds, new strategies, and probably a few combinations that feel downright unfair for the other team. Best of all, it's easy to jump into. The clever A3R auto-aim and auto-attack system helps newcomers get straight into the action. But if you've got aspirations of becoming the next esports superstar, you can switch over to full manual controls instead. The new cargo push mode has just arrived, and because the game has built-in voice chat, you'll hear every clutch call-out, last-second plan, and celebration as your team somehow pulls victory from the jaws of defeat. If this sounds like your sort of chaos, click the link in the description and give Astro Arena a go. You can use my code Larry in Astro Arena to redeem Random EXP 100 and Coin 100. Infos on how to activate the code are in the description. Just be warned, you'll probably end up saying, just one more match. About 6 matches ago. Now, long before Uniracers developer, Rockstar North, were gaming royalty, they went by the name of DMA Design, a then small Scottish developer known mostly for their highly successful puzzle game series, Lemmings. DMA were pioneers in the gaming industry, obsessed with pushing technology to its limits. In the early 90s, they started experimenting with pre-rendered CGI graphics, trying to bring Silicon Graphics workstation quality to home consoles. Strangely, Uniracers itself started life as a physics engine for a self-balancing unicycle. However, DMA soon realised it could be more than just a tech demo, it could be a highly competitive platform racing game. For those of you who have never played Uniracers before, it's quite a fun little platform racer where you race your own chosen mono-wheeled mode of transportation across several roller coaster-like 2D tracks. It's also unbelievably fast, so to indicate what kind of hazard is approaching, the platform you're on will suddenly change colour. Anticipating these obstacles with mid-air stunts increases your speed to surpass the other racers. But screw them up and you'll lose speed. So it's a classic risk and reward type affair. Anyhow, under the working title of One by One, DMA pitched the game to Nintendo, who, by chance, were on the lookout for fresh concepts at the time, and immediately fell in love with the idea. And so, Uniracers launched in the US on the 5th of December 1994, followed by a PAL release the following April under the name Unirally. Meanwhile, over at Pixar, a small team led by John Lasseter were creating animated shorts to prove the potential of CGI storytelling. One of these shorts in question, released in 1987, was Red's Dream. It is a bittersweet story about Red, a unicycle living in the clearance corner of a bike shop, dreaming of being the star of a circus performance. The short features a highly distinctive look and what could be described as a stylised characterisation that would go on to become Pixar's trade identity. And even without a face, Pixar's artists made you feel a deep empathy for what is a graphical representation of metal and vulcanised rubber. Come the launch of Uniracers, Pixar noticed something familiar with the game. The game's prominent unicycle. They felt that Uniracers didn't just feature a unicycle, it presented it in a way that was too similar to how Red had been brought to life in Red's Dream. Their concern was that the game replicated the expressive qualities, the sense of personality conveyed purely through motion and animation. So Pixar filed a lawsuit against both DMA Design and Nintendo for copyright infringement. DMA Design, on the other hand, argued that their unicycles were simply physics-driven objects, vehicles, not characters, and that any similarities were incidental. Now, this is where a lot of other retellings of this story become muddled. As in interviews with DMA's developer Mike Daly, he later recalled this version of events with the quote, "The problem with Pixar was that they seemed to think that any computer-generated unicycle was owned by them." This version of the story also states that DMA tried to counter more on the visual representation of unicycles in Uniracer, such as the characters coming in multiple different colours, etc., not just how their movements are displayed with personality. However, Pixar's argument was that DMA hadn't just copied the object, they had copied the specific animation choices from Red. Pixar claimed that the way the unicycles in Uniracers conveyed their personality, such as the slight wobble when slowing down, the specific curve of the frame when accelerating, was frame-by-frame plagiarism of Lasseter's animation of Red. In all fairness, there's only so much you could do to anthropomorphise a unicycle to convey human-like characteristics. Like the seat would obviously be a head, the pedals representing arms or hands, etc., so there's not really much else you can creatively do. However, ultimately, the court sided with Pixar. The judge agreed that the similarities in the CGI design and, critically, the animation style used to bring the object to life were just too similar to be a coincidence. This legal victory came with a death sentence for the game. As a result of the ruling, Nintendo had to terminate production of all additional Uniracers game packs, cancelled the planned Japanese release, and the first initial printing of 300,000 copies was all that would ever exist. DMA felt that the judge, lacking in experience in both video games, CGI technology and, let's be honest, common sense, failed to grasp that they were just trying to make a unicycle look like a unicycle. An everyday object. Well, as long as he lived in a circus anyway. And so, Uniracers was wiped off the map. It never received a sequel, and it has never been re-released on any of Nintendo's virtual console systems. All because the legal rights surrounding the core asset remain a potential minefield. DMA Design will continue to work with Nintendo, developing the unreleased Kid Kirby, which was intended to take advantage of the Super Nintendo mouse. However, the financial strain of the lawsuit and limited sales sadly caused DMA Design to struggle. In 1997, 3 years after the case and facing bankruptcy, they were acquired by Gremlin Interactive. However, despite losing their independence, DMA kept on experimenting. They would work on one final title for Nintendo, the highly innovative Body Harvest for the Nintendo 64, though the development hell the title went through strained their relationship with Nintendo, with the Big N cancelling the game and instead Midway publishing the game in the US and Gremlin Interactive in other regions. However, their next big risk was a 2D open-world game seen from a top-down perspective. A little game, you may have heard of it, Grand Theft Auto, which would go on to become the third highest grossing video game franchise of all time. Gremlin themselves would eventually be bought by Take-Two, and in 2002, DMA Design was rebranded as Rockstar North, following the release of Grand Theft Auto 3. Ultimately, The Pixar vs DMA Design lawsuit remains a tragic comedy of errors. Two then tiny companies fighting it out that would go on to become legendary juggernauts in their own respective mediums. Today, Uniracers cartridges are all over the place price-wise, with unboxed copies going from around $25 and fully boxed in excess of $200. So if you ever come across one on your gaming hunts, definitely grab it. It's a fun little Nintendo game that represents a brief moment in history of incredible innovation erased by ignorance and trying to humanise a velocipede in a digital world.
Hello you. Thanks ever so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to be first to see future Fact Hunt episodes. Click on the bell if you already are to make sure you're notified, and be sure to check out my other episodes. And if you want to be super awesome, check out my Patreon. But thanks again for watching, and until next time friends, I'm missing you already.